hey, look, Maxie, we're using the same map me and my dad used. We'll take the same route and make the same stops and see the same sights.
Dear the Map from a Goofy Movie, I need an explanation. I need an explanation for Idaho. I've read article after article and watched panel after panel, and I've heard over and over about how much thought and care your creators put into every aspect of your movie. And I simply cannot believe that this is the best Idaho they could draw. My kid did this when he was 8. When I see an Idaho that looks like this, all I can think is that the people who drew it must have been lazy or apathetic or very bad at drawing. But I know for a fact that in your case, none of those things were true. And if not, then why does Idaho look like this? So I'm lost, Map from a Goofy Movie. Josh parentheses 2025 can't help but look at this Idaho as a sign of failure. But I know that the people who made you didn't fail you. You are exactly what they wanted you to be. And Josh parentheses 1995 loved you just as much as they did. You didn't feel like a failure to me then. So that means it's me. It means that I've lost something in the last 30 years, something that's bigger than lines on a cartoon map, bigger than your movie, bigger than Idaho, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's lost it.
This song is for the rats.
So, what do you say, Matt from a Goofy Movie? Can you help me find it?
When they saw that the explosives in the cargo hold were just about to blow. This song is for the soil. It's toxic clear down to the bedrock, where no thing of consequence can grow. Drop your seeds there, let them go, let them all go. Let them all go.
Let us start with an accounting. Some things about you are map. That's Texas, that's Tennessee. Oklahoma's a little chubby maybe, but those are the Dakotas. And if there's one thing you do get right, it's barbecue, right there where Kansas City ought to be. But the rest of you is not map. We covered possibly Ohio in the last video, but that is not your worst state by far. Like, check out Minnesota, Iowa up here. Michigan looks like it's been squished in a funhouse mirror. Louisiana has grown a vestigial tail and apparently annexed Mississippi. West Virginia is just gone, as are Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. In fact, New England in general has been largely reduced to line. Vermont has eaten upstate New York, and Maine has been fully removed from existence, presumably because of something Stephen King accidentally summoned. The Florida Panhandle has been abandoned entirely, leaving the rest of it feeling even more awkwardly flaccid than normal. And the American Southwest looks like the Disney Corporation refuses to acknowledge the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. I realize I'm being a little nitpicky here, but I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is not the correct placement of Catalina Island. But like, is there a New Jersey? Feels like a fairly sizable nit. And by all accounts, a Goofy Movie was a labor of love. Director Kevin Lima would record himself acting out various roles so that animators could use him as a model. Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy, has apparently learned the choreography for the perfect cast so that he can do it when fans ask. They reshot 3/4 of the movie because of a single pixel of imperfection. Bill Farmer and James Marsden, the voice of Max, flew out to Phoenix to act out a live-action version of the Lester's Possum Park scene more than 20 years after the movie was out. I tell you, Map, when you listen to any of these people talk about the movie they were making then or now, it's obvious that they cared about a Goofy Movie. So why didn't anybody seem to care about you? Because you don't have to be like this. The artist Claire Hummel made a fan recreation of you, and I gotta say, hers looks like a map. She tried to reproduce the path you take pretty accurately, although she moves barbecue to the middle of Oklahoma, which in my opinion is extremely not correct. She just, has the state's shape like the States. Hot Topic, of all places, also sold one of these, and theirs has states that look like states. Although they do keep Blob Hawaii, and they also put the barbecue in Oklahoma. Hang on, am I sleeping on Oklahoma barbecue? Definitely not. So why don't your states look like states? They look like a drunk Frenchman was trying to map out the United States by having it described over the phone.
We start working with faxes, with phone calls, with tapes that we're sending back and forth to California. And every week the animators were sending the tape so that Kevin can look at them and give the corrections.
We talk here at about 9, it's there 6 o'clock at night. We do phone calls every single morning, or every other morning.
Oh. Well. So maybe I need to think about why you're like this. In his book, Everything Bad is Good for You, Steven Johnson argues that the shifts in technology leading up to the early 2000s made popular media increasingly complex and challenging. To say that the internet has changed culture is so obvious as to be parodic, but Johnson argues for a number of specific mechanics by which technology has altered the way we interact with cultural products. He calls this the sleeper curve, and I gotta say, Map, the sleeper curve is really doing a number on you. Johnson argues that most of the media technologies introduced over the past 30 years have been, in effect, repetition engines, tools designed to let you rewind, replay, repeat. Things like DVD, Blu-ray, and especially streaming, which wouldn't become dominant until after Everything Bad was published, allow us to watch and rewatch visual texts in a way that wasn't possible when a Goofy movie released. In 1995, a Goofy movie was made for a world where most of the people who saw it would see it once in the theater, most of the rest would rent it from Blockbuster and watch it once or twice at home, and a smaller chunk would buy the VHS and watch it maybe a lot of times, but mostly from start to finish. Johnson described screen media before the DVD as a pure present-tense medium. What appeared on the screen flew past you, as irretrievable as real-world events. He was writing about television there, but I think that's how most kids' movies were intended, to be experienced in the moment, not scrutinized. So maybe you're inaccurate because they weren't expecting us to put you side by side with a real map of the US like this. But to tell you the truth, Map, the inaccuracy is not the thing that really bothers me about you. Your contents are visible on screen in 6 different scenes in the movie, and this is the thing that really drives me crazy about you, Map. Every single time we see you, you are different. This is California, and this is California, and this is California, and this is California. It's all the same map, but none of these Californias are the same shape. This one doesn't even look like states. Did they just not care about you at all? Were you not worth the time of looking up what shape California is? Earlier, I reused a joke about possibly Ohio that I made in a previous video, and in that video, I traced the state of pseudo-Ohio in After Effects. So then, when I needed to make fun of Ohio again in this video, I just imported that asset that I'd already made. I can do whatever I want with it. Stretch it, spin it, fill it with the face of Delroy Lindo, whatever. Continuity is easy when you're reusing assets like this because the thing remains itself, even if you put Delroy Lindo's face on it. Of course, they weren't using After Effects in 1995, but that's why Disney had model sheets, references for how, for example, Mickey is supposed to look. This one is from 1938. This is what Mickey looks like, and if you get it wrong, it's not Mickey. They had model sheets for a Goofy movie too, of course, including comparisons for the 1942 Goofy shorts How to Fish and the Olympic Champ. The model sheets include 17 reference poses for Pete's dog Chainsaw and 18 for Max's cat Waffles, and neither of them even appear in the movie. But is there a reference for you, Map? If only. Johnson might have argued that as a kid's movie in your cultural moment, the idea that repeatability drives complexity should apply even more powerfully to you than to other media of your time, because young children have a greater tolerance for repeat encounters with the same story, and because parents of young children have an even greater tolerance for anything that distracts their children long enough for the dishes to be done. Preach, brother. But you came out in 1995, before the advent of the DVD. The tools I am using to analyze you, to put you on screen, trace you, slap Delroy Lindo all over your Ohio and wave it around, that these tools would exist and be in the hands of dinguses like me was spectacularly beyond the comprehension of the artists who drew you. You couldn't have known that I would be here to look at you with such judgmental eyes, with such intense demands. And you didn't ask for that. You are unambiguously a bad map. But to paraphrase the poet, good maps are all alike. Every bad map is bad in its own way. In his 1991 essay, Can There Be a Cartographic Ethics?, Brian J. Harley wrote that in every map made by a professional cartographer, some sort of judgment has to be made as to how to represent the world. All maps, he says, must distort reality. For example, the world, as you may know, is round, whereas paper is, by and large, flat. So how do we make the round thing flat is a foundational problem of mapmaking. As an example, Harley mentions the work of Arno Peters, and specifically the Gall-Peters projection, aka the map from that one episode of The West Wing.
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors. It distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. The Peters projection.
What the hell is that?
It's where you've been living this whole time.
The more familiar flat map of the round world is the Mercator projection, which was designed in the 16th century with the goal of making sea navigation as straightforward as possible. But the way the Mercator projection distorts reality makes, for example, North America and Africa seem about the same size, which they very much are not. Peters flattened the round Earth using a different mechanism so that the relative area was preserved, but he did so with expressly political goals. Harley mentions his work as an example of a map which distorted reality in the aid of the empowerment of those nations of the world Peters felt had suffered a historic cartographic discrimination. That Peters presented this design as a new invention to capture the politics of the 1970s, when in fact James Gall had already designed this map in 1855, is instructive. It feels especially obvious today that the choices mapmakers make are inseparable from social, cultural, and ideological values. Given that just this month Google Maps has taken one political position by calling it the Gulf of America, and MapQuest has taken another by having a tool where you can name it whatever you want. And I hear you, Map, the politics of cartography were probably not at the forefront of your animators' minds. Nevertheless, the point remains. Everyone who makes a map is attempting to capture a view of the world shaped by their own goals and assumptions. Every choice a mapmaker makes is part of what Harley calls the persuasive rhetoric of mapmaking, and he argues no mapmaker can avoid making such choices. The map is not the territory. This is not a pipe. This is not where we've been living all this time, any more than this is, or this, and so perhaps you are not any less where we've been living all this time. All maps distort reality in service of different goals and different values. So what are the values that you represent, Map? What are the goals of the people who drew you? Did you even want to be a map? I don't think so. I think you wanted to be a story.
In the Disney approach to feature animation, story is preeminent. Nothing is more important than story.
I think you wanted to tell us about Goofy. Like, look over here. Why can't they go east of Ohio? Were they responsible for whatever happened to New England? Are the Goofies witches? Or, no, wait, the arrow is in the ocean. Are the Goofies not supposed to drive to Europe? Actually, you can't drive in the ocean does seem like something that Goofy would need to remind himself of.
Now, Maxie, you can't drive a car in the ocean no matter how flat it looks. Not even if you drive real fast. After the third time, my dad wrote it right here on my map. Yuck.
This one has been pointed out before by people other than me, but I can't talk about this map without observing this instruction because A, they don't look at all these damn saucepans, and B, who packs saucepans like this? Of course they're gonna think they forgot them. They must be dropping saucepans along the highway like mile markers. Somewhere around Nevada, there's this note, which we can't read entirely. Just think about the kind of person who could make that note. First, what did they forget? What did they need to go back for? Both Claire Hummel and Hot Topic guessed tent, which is a hell of a thing to realize you've forgotten after about 6,200 miles, given my best approximation of the route. But the thing I love about this note is that it doesn't say remember the tent. It just fully accepts that forgetting the tent and then having to go back for it 6,200 miles into a road trip is par for the course. Nothing to be done. Gosh. Okay, but then, look at this. Look at this stupid thing that I have done. Because MapQuest launched in 1996, a year after you came out. This isn't what a map was at the time. People couldn't do what I had done here. They could have paused their VHS maybe and sat down for hours with a road atlas and a ruler and a notebook and a calculator, but they couldn't just drop pins on a map and then let the computer figure it out. More and more, I think myself naive to expect you to be a map just because you happen to be a map. Here I am asking you where Goofy is, but you're trying to tell me about who Goofy is. And who Goofy is... Excuse me for a moment, Map. I need to talk to the audience for a minute. Guys, I tried so hard not to do this. I deleted this section from the script months ago, but then I was watching a Goofy movie with some friends the other night, and my buddy Couch says, hang on, is his name Goofy Goof? So now we get to take a little side trip through the preposterous question of what the fuck is Goofy's name? Because if he's asking, then you're asking. And it seems like it shouldn't be a hard question, right? We got Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Donald and Daisy Duck, Horace Horsecollar, Jiminy Cricket. None of these names have ever changed. And originally, Goofy is introduced as Dippy Dog, which fits the pattern. We got a first name and a last name, and the last name is give or take his species. But then in 1938, Disney puts out this book called The Story of Dippy the Goof. And then after that, his name is just Goofy. But is that his first name or his last name? Who knows? Pete calls him Goof, but Principal Mazer calls him Mr. Goof, so plausibly his name is Goof Goof. But it's not called a Goof movie, it's called a Goofy movie, so presumably there's gotta be a Goofy in there somewhere, right? So the best I can make sense of it is that there are 4 possibilities for Goofy's name, right? He could be Goof Goof, he could be Goof Goofy, Goofy Goof, or Goofy Goofy. What am I doing with my life? Goof Troop Season 1 Episode 1, which is set in the same continuity as a Goofy movie, says his name is GG Goof. So what does the GG stand for? Please tell me his name is not Goof Goof Goof. It's not out of the question. Well, in the 1950s, Disney decided that Goofy was too goofy. And so they decided to rehabilitate the character, turning him into just an everyman sort of normal guy who has a wife and a job and a kid, and his name was George Geef. So the best guess we have as to the name of the title character from a Goofy movie is George Geef Goofy Goof. George Geef Goofy Goof. And so I will admit that there is a certain measure of ambiguity around the question of what Goofy's name is. But, and this is where I come back to you, Map, because I feel like if anything, there is one thing you should know, and that is how to spell Goofy, because it is, in fact, in the name of the movie that you are in. And it is not spelled like this. You could have said dog, that would have been fine. You could have said Geef after the absurd name from the 50s, but Goofy with an E doesn't appear anywhere else. Look at the title card of the movie you are in. It sounds like Goofy's trying to make himself sound French, a la Stephen Colbert. Monsieur Goofy. Remember this joke. It will become important shortly. All right, I know I said I didn't want to do this, and I didn't. But the more I think about it, the more I think that maybe actually this question, this dumb question of what is Goofy's name, is in fact the very problem at the heart of this essay. Because the problem is not that I don't know what Goofy's name is. The problem is that I feel like I should know what Goofy's name is. And why on earth do I think that? Why do I think that I should know this guy's government name? Why do I feel like this guy should live in a geographically accurate representation of the United States? Why do I feel like I should be allowed to know who this guy's parents are? What am I, a Goofy birther? But, If none of that is supposed to matter, then why do you say Benjamin Goof? That's where we were before all of this started. I apologize. Damn it. Couch, get out of here. Good grief. Here I am asking you where Goofy is, but you're trying to tell me about who Goofy is. And who Goofy is part of a family. And that's where I start to question everything I thought I learned about media in the last 30 years. Because good God, do things get bonkers. Let's just see if we can figure out the relationships. According to G. Maurice's family tree, Benjamin and Walter are Goofy's great and great-great-grandfathers respectively. According to this family tree from a French comic, his father's name is Demetrius, but according to this one from the Goofy Adventure story, his father's name is Wilbur. According to this fan family tree by a guy called LP, Benjamin is Goofy's father and Walter is his grandfather, but actually this could go on forever because people have been trying to make sense of Goofy's family for as long as he's been around and it never works. For instance, this is Goofy's dad. He's labeled as Benjamin Dog. Why is his last name Dog? Well, because there's a line in the Goofy Adventure story where Goofy tells his son Junior that Amos Goofy was his grandfather on his mother's side, so Goofy must not be Goofy's last name by birth, so LP goes with the last name from Goofy's first appearance as Dippy Dog. Why is his name Benjamin? Because you, Map from a Goofy movie, have Benjamin written below Walter on the list of Goofies. But why does he look like this? I'm so glad you asked. Because of a scene from the House of Mouse episode, Goofy's Menu Magic.
Toasting some eggs, and I'm working on some popcorn. How's the corn coming, Pop? Eh?
So the bit here is that Goofy, being Goofy, thinks popcorn means corn prepared by Pop, so there's his Pop shucking some corn. This bit obviously wasn't meant to establish Goofy's dad as a character, but here he is under the picture for Goofy's father on the Disney Wiki, and here he is again on LP's timeline under the name Benjamin Dog. But here's the thing, the undoing of all that LP and G. Maurice and 100 other Goofy genealogists have been broken by, that I am broken by, that you, Map from a Goofy movie, are currently breaking you with, there is no there. We know this is Goofy's dad because he calls him Pop, and we know Goofy's dad is called Benjamin because somebody wrote it right here in the Gulf of whatever the fuck we're calling it. But whoever drew you in 1995 wasn't referencing this throwaway joke because the throwaway joke was made in 2002. People keep trying to make sense of Goofy's family tree and it simply cannot be done. There's this one by LP, there's this one by Adrian Micot, there's this one by G. Maurice, this one from a different Italian magazine circa 1997, a third Italian magazine. Why are the Italians so interested in this? Here is Goofy's family tree on a Ugandan postage stamp. Here is a probably satirical academic paper attempting to identify the hormone disorder responsible for the extremely high rate of fecundity in Goofy's family. Here is a 6,300-word explication from a guy called Cool Steve explaining the canonical text from which he derived every detail of Goofy's family history for his fan fiction to life and times of before and after. And all of these derive their authority ultimately from the quote-unquote official Goofy family tree from the Goofy Adventure story, which, let me be clear, does not include the names Walter, Benjamin, or Amos. Johnson uses family trees extensively to argue for the sleeper curve. Social networks, rather, but the idea is similar. He attempts to map out the relationships between characters as a way of visualizing the complexity of the texts he's analyzing. He compares a map of a 1978 episode of Dallas with one of a 2001 episode of 24, noting that a glance is all you need to see that something profound has happened to the social complexity of the TV drama in the past 30 years. So let's look at all these Goofy family trees again. Do you notice that there are two completely different types? Half of these are computer-generated genealogies, and the other half are just drawings of idiots and trees. And here's the thing. The people who are drawing the idiots and trees don't know about the people with the computers. Because look at this one from Picsou. It's simple, straightforward, and vague. Just a few goofs, dingoes, giving us a glimpse of Goofy's storied ancestors. These aren't relationships, these are just some of the goofs that came before. Contrast that with any of the fan-made trees. Complex, arcane, full of known unknowns and best guess approximations, but built on the unshakable assumption that there is a right answer, that Goofy does have an actual canonical family tree. look at all these question marks, each an expression of confidence that there is a goof here, we just haven't found him yet. This is what we're used to now. Johnson writes, in 24, following the plot is not merely keeping track of all the dots that the show connects for you. The allure of the show also lies in weighing potential connections, even if they haven't been deliberately mapped on screen. The show's engagement comes from layering each scene with a thick network of affiliations. You have to focus to follow the plot, and in focusing, you're exercising the part of your brain that maps social networks. We are used to thinking that there is a complex social reality existing in the stories we watch, only a part of which is visible on screen. But Map, that is not the world you were made for. This throwaway popcorn bit aired in 2002 on House of Mouse, which was essentially a frame narrative holding together classic shorts to air on ABC's Saturday mornings. As far as I can tell, House of Mouse was never released on DVD. It's not on Disney Plus or any other streaming service I can find. I think the only reason it still exists is because fans used capture cards to digitize the broadcasts and then uploaded them to YouTube. Capture cards and YouTube are two more things to add to the list of repetition engines that didn't exist when Johnson was writing, and two more things that whoever drew you, Map, didn't know they needed to be thinking about. They also didn't know about the internet. I mean, they might have known about, like, AOL, but they didn't know about the Indux, an index of Disney comics dating back to 2000, including scans of more than 172,000 publications in 58 languages, about 21,000 of which include Goofy, which allows me to look up things like how many times has Goofy appeared alongside such luminaries as Madame Lazonga and Big Chief Pain in the Face. Good God, why is old Disney so racist? The animators certainly couldn't have known about the South Nordic Academy for Donaldism, the extremely tongue-in-cheek online organization where the paper Abnormal Fecundity Rate in Goofy's Family was originally published, which, while obviously memey in tone, features papers from 28 different authors. Even a modestly popular show, Johnson writes, spawns hundreds of fan sites and discussion forums where each episode is scrutinized and annotated with an intensity usually reserved for Talmudic scholars. He describes projects like these and like the Disney Wiki as evolving works of popular scholarship, where the public, collaborative nature of these sites means that dozens or hundreds of fans can team up to capture all the nuances of a show and leave behind a record for less motivated fans to browse through at their convenience. Please note, I am the less motivated fan in this analogy. But that's my world, Map, it's not yours. The people who animated this popcorn joke in 2002 made it to be watched and immediately forgotten. It was supposed to get a quick laugh, and that was all. They didn't know that somebody would record it, capture it to digital, and upload it to the internet, or that someone else would screen grab this frame and upload it to the Disney Wiki as the image of Goofy's father, any more than the person who drew you could have predicted that someone would list his name as Benjamin Gouffet. Adrienne McCo's family tree uses the Gouffet spelling too, and you are the source for the Gouffet spelling. I made that joke about Monsieur Gouffet, before I knew that most of the animation for a Goofy movie had been done in France. So now, I'm completely sure that the reason you say Gouffet instead of Goofy is that the French animators didn't know how to spell Goofy, because in France, Goofy's name is Dingo. But nobody involved in your production could ever have guessed that 30 years later, a pretend academic would use you to make a family tree to argue that Goofy's female ancestors could carry multiple overlapping pregnancies to term for religious reasons. You were drawn in a world where no one would have a chance to notice whether there was a little bonus steak carved out in Nevada as you flashed briefly on screen. And I am making this video in a world where the Wikipedia page for Goofy is semi-protected because of 22 years of edit wars about whether Goofy is a dog, a human, a dog-like human, a human-like dog, a bear, a hippopotamus, or an Aberdeen Angus cattle. You were not made for my world. And for as much as I agree with Johnson that the growth of repeatability, deep dives, and in-depth analysis has improved the quality and potential complexity of popular culture, when I look at you, I realize I kind of miss your world. I started this letter looking at you from 2025, where I can go to IMDb and find a curated list of your flaws, organized into categories and rated by how helpful they are. Where I can step frame by frame through each of your appearances and identify every imperfection. When I can put you on YouTube and make fun of you in front of however many people the algorithm decides to show you to. But that's not the world you were made in, or the world you were made for. And it's not the world where I fell in love with you. I fell in love with you in a world where when I looked at you, I didn't see a continuity error. I didn't hear the accursed ding of petty judgment. I saw you for what you were. Not just what a map is, but what a map means. A set of images on a screen that represented not a honed, perfected asset, but an idea, and an idea that changed as the story changed. When Goofy first shows you to Max, you're a family history. A historical record of trips taken and saucepans forgotten. A document of where the best barbecue is and where was that coffee shop that Pop used to love. You're an inheritance and a legacy. When we see you next, you're something different. You're vivid but monochrome in the evening dark, shadily lit by the glove box light, and all that's on you is all that matters. Like Destiny or Los Angeles. Your root lines are rough and textured here because you need us to know that they are pencil, and you want us to realize what Max is realizing. They could be erased. You are a shameful act performed in the shadows. And then you become more vibrant, more colorful, so full of joy and delight, sunlit and windswept as we watch Max and Goofy follow you across the imperfect geography of their nation, because you are the joy of travel, of family, of everything that Goofy hoped for and Max is coming to love. You are a ramble down the open road. And then, in the moment of crisis, you are simple. All you are now is a simple choice. North or south, family or fame, dad or Roxanne, fish or city. You are the moment of truth. Let me show you at your worst, Map. Of all your peccadillos and peculiarities, this version of you is the one that has bothered me most. Arguably, this is the least Map you ever are. None of these shapes are even vaguely similar to the states they represent. And worse than that, we can see the white borders at the edge of the image. This supposedly is all you are. No longer the map of the US that you've been the whole movie, but a chaotic sketch of the American Southwest on which Idaho and Lake Destiny don't even appear. But to look at this picture of you at all is to incarcerate you in the worldview of 2025. I stepped frame by frame through this scene so that I could find the one frame where I could see the whole of you, where I could see the white borders that showed that you were wrong. The map is different. Ding! I held you down for judgment by my standards like a lepidopterist pinning butterflies up in a frame, or the people who made fun of that bad picture of Beyoncé. Of course, if you take a vibrant, living performance and pin it to a single frame, the result is going to be unflattering. So let's see you as you are, Map. Let us see you at your best. Goofy and Max have just reconciled, father and son united. They drift through the sky on a tarp tied to Max's butt like a parachute diaper, with new union and new purpose. Go watch the movie if it doesn't make sense. What matters is that when Goofy needed family, you were family. When Max was at his lowest point, you were the vessel for his weakness. You carried them across the country, and it was you who gave Max his last chance to come clean, but all of that is over now. They both needed you, and now they let you go. Max lets go of his bitterness about where he isn't to appreciate where he is. Goofy lets go of the perfect trip that he had mapped out and embraces the changing chaos of the trip that he is on. He lets go of the family behind him to hold tight to the family in front of him, and you drift on the wind, free and forgotten. And before you go, you remind us what remains. Los Angeles, and for the first time ever, seeing eye to eye. I'm sorry, Map. The 30 years between you and me have made it harder to love a thing and let it go. When I first watched a Goofy movie, I was about Max's age, and I saw you as Max saw you, as the imposition of some foreign order on the freedom of my dreams, as something to rebel against through a series of bad decisions and ultimately crimes undertaken to impress a girl. And I started this letter as a dad about Goofy's age, looking at you as Goofy looked at you, with the expectation that you were perfect, that you were correct, that you were whole, that a map should be a plan that you can follow, that it will be the same from moment to moment and even from generation to generation, that it matters what was forgotten because we must not forget it again. But here's the thing, Map. When the time came, Max and Goofy both let you go. They didn't forget, but they did let go. And if there is anything to learn from you or from this movie, it is that the petty ding of thoughtless, unkind judgment will drive us all into a ravine, and that it is never too late to go back, and that we can remember something and still leave it behind, and that we should love first, love always, because anything else is not worth the cost. So thank you, Map. Thank you for teaching me again what you taught Goofy. To love a thing for what it is, with all its imperfections, instead of what I think it ought to be. Except for barbecue bologna.
I want to sing one for the cars that are right now headed silent down the highway, and it's dark and there is nobody driving, and something has got to give. I saw you standing by the road